Hello, this is Martin Gore from Depeche Mode.
Hi, this is Dave Gahan from Depeche Mode, and you are listening to
Depeche Mode, the podcast. I'm your host, Jon Justice, and thank you so much for checking out another episode as I record this on Thanksgiving. And for those that are celebrating here in the United States, a happy Thanksgiving to you. Again, I'm glad you're with the show. It was Saturday, December 11th, 1993. The 345th day of that year, I arrived with my friend at a stadium in San Jose, California, built for sporting events that I did not watch. And for this evening, this would become a temple, a gathering of devoted fans, and for me, my first time witnessing the tour for an album that I had already fallen in love with, Songs of Faith and Devotion. A notable departure from what would become an apex mountain for the band in Violator. More acoustic, more raw, deeper, more impactful, and challenging for fans who had grown accustomed to the keyboard synth notes and clean rhythmic grooves, the simplicity of the single red rose on its cover, and the tour that would follow. More straightforward than what I was about to experience that night. Dave had transformed in the cover image and promotional pictures. The stark, bold, and purples and deep shades of red. The videos so far for the album only served as to provide a visual movement to the artwork of what was before an electronic band to what could be easily described as now a full-fledged rock band, bordering on sacrilege to provide such a description to my beloved Depeche Mode that will always mean much more to me than any traditional rock band could ever be. And now, for the first time this night, Anton Corbijn's art, the visual director of this band that I love so deeply, his photographs, the music videos now, the images I would get to witness in real life. This fantasy world of love, lust, pain, condemnation, reflection, and absolution coming to life in what could rival any Broadway stage production in terms of set dressing, lighting, music, emotional impact, and resonance. I was unprepared for what would transpire before my eyes that night. From the curtains that would shroud my preacher and his deans and deacons, augmented by spotlights that would only provide larger-than-life silhouettes of my therapeutic heroes through the opening song, who, through song, were carrying me through an adulthood of heartbreak and loss. Those curtains would, of course, give way, simplistic in its forms in terms of the stage, larger than life in its function, and transcendent in how I would forget for those hours that I was actually inside of a man-made structure. No, I was teleported, as if one of thousands standing at the base of a mountain, observers, participants in a ritual of life that would reach deep into my inner being and lift me up to heights that I never could have achieved or reached on my own. Each song, without being spoiled in the absence of an internet, was both a shock and a revelation, never knowing what would come next in the set list and in what ways my guides on this night would twist and remix these songs that I could recite word for word as if they were my own name. Dave that evening was a preacher, the likes of which I have never seen on stage since, and nothing will replace that first night of seeing the devotional tour. The concert film devotional serves as the perfect reflection in execution of what I personally experienced and so many other thousands experienced throughout that tour, but for me personally, that night. Welcome to the show. It is 31 years since the release of the Devotional DVD. I've spoken recently about the possibility of getting a re-release of the concert film, and I've mentioned how I'm not so sure it actually needs a re-release at this point in time. I don't know what a Blu-ray version could do to clean up the grainy footage of what Anton Corbijn created in what I arguably believe is the best concert release the band has ever put out. There is just something truly special about that concert film, in as much as I just described of my first night enjoying it. I'll never forget, and this goes back to post-Ultra, my buddy Jeff Shamrock. His name was Jeff, but he went by Jeff Shamrock. He was Irish, duh. He was somewhat familiar with Depeche Mode, and I've told this story before, but it's relevant relating to marking, once again, another anniversary of the release of this film. I had won tickets to go to the Ultra launch party through K-Rock Radio in L.A., and Jeff was becoming familiar with the band, and I, one night, sat him down and said, hey, let's watch Devotional. I only had a 19-inch TV screen and a VHS player in my small apartment in Anaheim, California. And we'll just say we were, partaking, imbibing that evening, so to speak. And he remained silent throughout the entirety of watching Devotional that evening. And I remember at the end, I thought that he was bored. I thought, he hated this. I feel bad. I've just ruined this guy's night. And he was just stunned, blown away. Said he had never seen anything like it. Reminded him of The Doors, which was his favorite band at the time, and Jim Morrison. And he was just flabbergasted at what he watched in that Anton Corbijn concert film, and has been a Depeche Mode fan ever since. I took time out this week. I have a sort of an extended vacation with the Thanksgiving holiday, and watched a majority of Devotional after the family had gone to bed. I had enjoyed a couple glasses of my beloved spice rum, and it just hits my emotional core every single time I watch it. It's wholly Depeche Mode while truly being a snapshot in time for this band that we never really saw this version of again. The band has transformed throughout the years. The albums have changed. We've discussed this on the many, many episodes of Depeche Mode, the podcast. But this moment in time, while 100% Depeche Mode is an incredibly unique Depeche Mode in the time period, and specifically a Dave Gahan that we never saw again, and the end of Alan Wilder's being a part of this beloved band. I love the album Songs of Faith and Devotion. I love Devotional. Violator is an apex mountain, I think, for the band. But in terms of progression in what the band did with Songs of Faith and Devotion, and to a lot of success, and I'll get into this a little bit later on when we get into your emails this week, because I have a question from a friend of the show about what I believe is Depeche Mode's most divisive album, and I kind of come back to Songs of Faith and Devotion, and I don't want to get ahead of myself relating to what I want to talk about later in the episode. But I know for me, and it's all subjective, it is such a huge difference between Violator and Songs of Faith and Devotion. Now, if you listen to them back to back, you can still see at its core sort of the blues roots in both of the releases, but certainly the changes, the more acoustic, raw feel of what Songs of Faith and Devotion did, it was a progression for the band that was absolutely successful and continued to build upon the explosion in popularity that the band had received over Violator in this immense devotional tour. It was pretty incredible. I mean, this could have gone another way completely in terms of the success of the band, and then we know everything changed after that. And that moment in time, too, when the band was probably going through their deepest and most difficult personal struggles, it was also at a time, and this is not a pass on any of the indulgences any of the indulging that the band took place. We know that Fletch was dealing with his own emotional breakdown. Dave was heavy into his drug uses. Martin was drinking. But it was also at an age where their bodies could sustain it, and it would raise the level of their creativity in a way that you simply cannot do later on, and a testament to this band having come out of this time period and survived this moment of, again, debauchery, if you will, and incredible creativity that most bands simply do not survive. They kind of reach this apex, a combination of everything they're dealing with in life, enjoying life as they see on their terms to its fullest, regardless of how destructive it was being at the time, only to come out on the other side and bless us fans with decades of further releases. It's a truly incredible story, and I wonder if one day it'll be captured on film. I kind of dread the thought of a biopic of Depeche Mode, just because we know these individuals so well, as if they because they are our lifelong friends. At the same time, it would be incredible to see their story told in a comprehensive way on the big screen. I'm not sure what I would want more, sort of a top-to-bottom documentary done professionally, and we've certainly seen many of those, and Anton has done his fair share in terms of the films that he's released, but just something that akin to what the Monument book does for the band's discography and career. Or if I would want to see, actors go and portray the band and go through maybe a time period, and maybe perhaps a time period that I'm speaking of right now. And again, I would be hard-pressed. There's a part of me that wants it, and there's a part of me that goes, oh my gosh, to see an actor attempting to go and portray Dave on stage, unless they just absolutely nailed it. And I guess in the back of my mind, I think of Bohemian Rhapsody, and I'm not a Queen fan per se, but I do enjoy their music, and I love that film, but I wonder what hardcore, the hardcore equivalent of a Depeche Mode fan to Queen thinks of that film. Be that as it may, happy anniversary to Devotional, which continues to provide this fan with an immense amount of joy. My joy, if you will. All right, before we get to your emails this week, I found an article here from Radio X in the UK. 10 great gigs that took place on Christmas Day. Radio X looks back at some of the live shows that have taken place on Christmas Day. Entertainment closes down. We all stay at home with our friends and our family, right? Not always. Musical history has also seen the odd live show that takes place on December 25th. And coming in at number 4 on the list is Depeche Mode. December 25th, 1980. Come with us to Crocs at the turn of the 80s, the Essex hotbed of new romantic fashion and the electronic music scene. Yes, that really is a crocodile in a small pool at the entrance of the photograph that I'm looking at that accompanies this article. Apparently, the budding synth pop trio performed a Christmas Day show there at the first Christmas of the decade. Further details, however, are scarce. According to setlist.fm, they played their debut single of Dreaming of Me, which they'd recently recorded at the time, plus its chart-bound follow-up New Life. 1981 would see Mode storm the pop charts with their single, of course, Just Can't Get Enough. And as I do every week, there is no new news on the items that we talk about every single week, whether it is a release of the Memento Mori live tour or those 4 fully produced tracks that we've now have just grown infamous from the Memento Mori sessions. All right, your emails this week, talkshownerd@gmail.com. We start off with friend of the show, as you all are, Chris Culpepper, who writes, what do you think is the most divisive album from the DM catalog? My opinion, it's probably Ultra. which is my third favorite album of the catalog. Alan is gone. Too much time between releases. Their best material is behind them, etc. But it could be Songs of Faith and Devotion or even Violator. What album truly divides DM fans based on their opinion? Thanks, John, and happy Thanksgiving, Chris. So I'm going to throw this out there for another podcast, so I want to get your answers to this and your thoughts, because I would love to hear from those of you that listen to the show on a weekly basis, and so that we can kind of come maybe to a consensus of podcast listeners of what the most divisive album is. I did share this with my friend Matt, who said he'll have to give this some further thought. Busy week with a holiday here in the United States and all. Initial reaction would be for him Songs of Faith and Devotion, when they took on a more bluesy and rock elements with live and less produced instruments, but it's still pretty universally loved, so I'm struggling to say divisive. Maybe Playing the Angel, loved it at first, but with time it's not held up for me. But I know some fans swear by it. I will continue to ponder, says Matt. Yeah, you know, my instinctive reaction to the question was Songs of Faith and Devotion, only because it was only over the course of the past few years in the run-up to Memento Mori that I was even made aware that Songs of Faith and Devotion was divisive among the fandom. I was not aware of this at all. Certainly not Violator. I have not heard a lot of division in Violator, although I have a lifelong friend of mine whose friendship was forged over Depeche Mode, who bailed on the band after Violator. They became too popular for him. He became sort of a Vince Clarke and said, "Peace, I'm out." Thought that Violator had, too many songs that had a house groove to them, and he wasn't into that anymore and lost interest after that album. So I do have my own real-world example of an album being divisive. And in this case, for him, becoming more popular with the mainstream. So I'm interested to hear from you, though. So Songs of Faith and Devotion is the one that pops up in my head most. I think we know that the album that receives the most critical of reviews from fans has got to be Spirit. But again, in terms of divisive, that's a that's a tough one. Except to say Songs of Faith and Devotion, because like I said, as I found out, there's been many individuals who simply did not like that album, and I was really kind of surprised to hear that. So last week I asked the question of what's your therapy song? And maybe it was an unfair question to ask, because I was thinking back on last week's episode. I almost feel like I need to apologize for last week's episode because it was lackluster, to say the least. They can't all be winners. There's a saying, and it's absolutely true, in my full-time job of being a news talk show host, that, and I think this rings true for those that host music shows as well, but I had a fellow on-air personality say, for a host of a radio show, it kind of goes like this. Every week you have one show that you absolutely hate. You have 3 shows that you thought was okay. And you have one show that you thought was the best show that you've ever done. And it absolutely rings true. It's a little bit different when it comes to podcasting because I'm only doing this once a week. Last week would have been one of those episodes where, I was not happy with it at all. Be that as it may, I threw out this rather depressing question of what are your Depeche Mode therapy songs? And I did get a few responses, so I wanted to go and share those with you. So thank you for those that decided to answer my morbid question. David Sichel writes, thanks for the podcast. I got addicted now. Well, thank you for that. This is JD from Paris. About your question on DM therapy songs, I thought about it all week, and here's a short list. On top, It Doesn't Matter 2. Interesting. A short but immense song with such a melancholy melody. You see, I would go actually, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I would actually go with It Doesn't Matter. No, It Doesn't Matter 2. No, that's the one that It Doesn't Matter 1, excuse me. Doesn't Matter 1 is probably, I know it's not title 1, but it Doesn't Matter from Some Great Reward. One of my all-time favorite DM songs. And a DM song that is forever attached to a moment in my life in the past that it can never be removed from. Blue Dress, Waiting for the Night as well. And finally, Leave in Silence, the quieter mix, which is kind of a bittersweet lullaby. He mentions Saint Jarna in there. And is that how we say that, by the way? Have we ever come to a conclusion on how we say Saint Jarna? That's how I've always said it. I could not finish without quoting Oberkorn. Nice. I actually named one of the ships in the first book of my science fiction series, the Oberkorn, because of Depeche Mode. It's a small town. A track I've always been fond of. I listen to it and its development mix at least twice a week. I also love the story about the title of the track. Oberkorn is a tiny town in the microscopic state of Luxembourg, where DM made a gig in '82. After the gig, the boys searched for a restaurant. All were closed, and one local told them, in the evening, everything is closed soon. So you know, Oberkorn, it's a small town. Thanks for all. Hope to see you soon. Thank you for that. I greatly appreciate it. Also writes, what about a podcast session about the 12-inch singles vinyl box sets? Their prices on eBay and Discogs show clearly which albums are preferred by buyers. Does anyone, maybe Rob Rom, know exactly the number of exemplary issued? They say these are limited editions. Best regard, JD. Yeah, you know what? I will put that in the mix for a future episode. And thank you for the email this week. David Hudson, replying to Therapy Songs, just simply writes, "Good night, lovers." A song that does not get a lot of mention on this podcast, but a good song nonetheless. Michael Zavala says, "Sea of Sin." Okay. Actually was listening to that just the other day. Ted Fabiano says, "Love your podcast." Thank you, Ted. I appreciate that. Have to put in a plug for Never Let Me Down Again as best live DM song. The crowd just goes nuts with anticipation when that intro leads to the first crash of drums. The arm waving, many good YouTube representative videos like this one, and he shared one that is a sort of a history of the band with the song. And lastly, a friend of the show, Danielle Manette writes, "Answering your prompt about using Depeche Mode as therapy, here's my take on it. The way I use their music is part of my everyday mental well-being routine. Listening to music you love is known to increase both dopamine and oxytocin, the two feel-good hormones. Absolutely aware. Done a lot of research on that. Plus, listening to music from our youth creates a phenomenon called neural nostalgia, which creates powerful emotional reactions like joy and comfort. I'd say this is the best therapy all around. As for my favorite B-sides, for sure, my top two are Fly on the Windscreen and But Not Tonight, since they were both on the U.S. release of Black Celebration. I'm not sure they count. If not, then my top three are Flexible, Set Me Free, Remotivate Me, and Route 66, writes Danielle. Well, thank you for that. And actually, just as a bit of a plug, for those that enjoy Star Wars, I'm going to be recording my Star Wars podcast as soon as I wrap up this week's episode here on Depeche Mode, the podcast. But I'm actually going to be getting quite a bit into the feel-good hormones, watching movies and TV shows that creates that same phenomenon known as neural nostalgia. So if you're interested, be sure to look for a Star Wars show with Jon Justice, Jon, and you can listen to that show as well. Thank you so much for checking out this week's episode. If you enjoy science fiction, and of course you enjoy Depeche Mode, I hope that you will support my podcasts and check out my science fiction adventure series. Set in a future where air and spaceflight culture has replaced car culture, it is inspired in part by Depeche Mode. The main character himself is a massive Depeche Mode fan at a time in the future when the music of the 80s through the 2000s is nostalgic and popular among the characters of the story, while featuring references, as I mentioned, both direct and indirect, and telling an exciting science fiction space opera saga inspired by my love of Star Wars. As Earth faces its end, follow starfighter pilots Taft, Katha, and their crew on a journey of survival across the galaxy as they fight for humanity's future. It is a fast-paced and action-packed science fiction adventure, and if you enjoy your sci-fi to be epic, filled with some romance, really cool technology, EMBARK is perfect for you. I wrote it for adults, but it's age-appropriate for those 11 plus. Pick up EMBARK Book 1 today. Available at Amazon.com. 7 books in all in the series, in hardcover, paperback, audiobook, ebook, and Kindle Unlimited at Amazon.com. Jon, Jon Justice. Again, for those in the U.S., a happy Thanksgiving. Otherwise, a happy holidays to everybody else. Thank you so much for checking out this week's episode, and I hope wherever you are happy, you are healthy, and you are safe. God bless, and I'll talk to you again next week. Bye.
Hello, this is